I do just want to thank, again, in our AV booth yesterday running the show, Damone Fanuni and Michael Levine for being back there today, and AE for your help back there as well. And of course, no high holidays are possible without our facilities staff. So if you see them on the way out, please do make sure to thank them. How has this last year been for you? Jordan chuckle. It's a loaded question, I know, but it's also one that, at least to each other, we don't often answer honestly. So I'll ask you again, how has this last year really been for you? I know that for some of us, on the whole, it's been a good year. A year of liberation from undesired social activities and the pressures and obligations that come with being in relationship and community showing up. It's been a year of slowing down. It's been a year of family. For others, the loss and isolation of these last 18 months has been heartbreaking, demoralizing, and painful. We've sat in the loneliness of quiet homes, longing for connection, presence, to be seen and felt. And many of us are somewhere in between, celebrating the freedoms while acknowledging those people and things whom we've lost. Now, for me, as good as this year has been, I've experienced much of it as a year of closedness. If you're anything like me, as the walls I put up around my personal space grew higher, the walls around my heart also grew. As I physically separated from others, it was all too easy to find myself emotionally separating from others as well. While maybe heightened in this last year and a half, it's not a new experience for me. Over the years, I perfected the art of ignoring my longing for closeness, to be seen, to be felt. So much so that it often takes me a while to realize that I've even done it. I put my head down, I do what I need to do, and I get through my day, numbing, ignoring, building walls. Now, doing what we need to get through the day is not a bad thing, but it does come with a price. When we begin to wall off our heart, to harden it, we stop living. We are no longer present to ourselves, to our experiences, to what's really going on for us. When we wall off our hearts, we don't feel anything. No joy, no pain, no passion, no longing. There's no selective filter for emotions that we like. We either feel or we don't. We're either present to everything or nothing. Now, we all cope with this when it happens in our lives in different ways. Some of us build up these high walls and hope that if our pain is out of sight, it's out of mind. Others numb those feelings with television, food, alcohol, drugs, shopping. And some of us attempt to deflate those feelings by releasing that valve in small spurts, like defizzing a bottle of Coke. But there's one particular way that's so ingrained in our people's DNA that it extends back to the very origins of our people. We complain. Throughout our journey in the wilderness on the way to the Holy Land, we complain constantly. We have that incident dubbed Mei Merivah, literally the waters of quarreling, where the people complain about the lack of water after the death of Miriam, wishing that they had died in Egypt rather than make this journey towards freedom. We know how this ends. Moses, fed up with the people, strikes a rock instead of speaking to it, and because of this, he loses the privilege of entering into the Holy Land. A few parshiot later, we have the story of the Meraglim, the 12 scouts who enter into the land of Israel. While they like what they see, they're terrified of the people who inhabit the land and see themselves as grasshoppers and the Canaanites as giants. 10 of them incite the people and the fear spreads. Once again, they wish they had died in Egypt, going so far as to say to each other, Nashuva Mitzrayma. Let us return back to Egypt. And hear that language, Nashuva. The same root as tshuva, to do repentance, to come back to God. Just as we come back to God this time of year, they wanted to go back to Egypt and its gods. And so, to calm God, who is angry at this point, Moses uses a version of the 13 attributes that we recited this morning. Adonai er chapayim v'rav chesed, noseh avon b'fesha v'nakeh. The Lord slow to anger and abounding in kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression. Salach na le'avon ha'am hazeh ki godel chastecha, v'chasher nasata la'am hazeh mitzrayim ve'adhena. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people according to your great kindness, as you have forgiven this people ever since Egypt. Now their punishment. This is where the Israelites of that generation, not a single one of them, except for Caleb and Joshua, would see the land of Israel. As we continue to move back earlier in the Torah, we move back to the book of Numbers, and we have the incident of the quail and the manna. The people are again complaining, but this time about food. The manna, which was supposed to taste like anything that you wanted, that was available in exactly the quantity that you needed, was not enough for some of the Israelites. They wanted meat. They wanted flesh. They remembered the fish and the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic that they had in Egypt. And now they just had this mystery miracle meat. God gives them meat in the form of quail to abundance, but each and every person who eats of this quail dies. Even in the moment of revelation, going back to Exodus, when our ancestors met face to face with the awesomeness of God at Sinai and received the Torah, they couldn't handle it. After all their spiritual preparation, they can only bear hearing the first 10 commandments. Finally beseeching Moses, saying, "Speak to us and we'll obey, but let not God speak to us any longer, lest we die." The moment was too overwhelming. A classic Hasidic tradition puts this moment even earlier in the narrative, actually, that the people only heard the first aleph of the very first word of the 10 Commandments, Anochi. And if any of you speak Hebrew, you know that the aleph by itself doesn't make any sound. So they heard the silence before God began to speak in thunder and lightning, and they said, "Nope, had enough of that. Moses, tell us what God says." They missed out on revelation because of their fear. Now, I could sit here probably until 3 p.m. going through the different quarrels, but that's just a sampling of the complaining throughout our time in the wilderness. But my point, to quote Moses himself, is that we are a stiff-necked people. We're stubborn, we're quarrelsome, we complain constantly, even in the most meaningful and awesome moments. I think, though, there's a compelling reason why we resort to complaining. When we complain to someone else, we actually connect with them, which is one of the things that we long for in those moments. It's temporarily cathartic. We can do something without actually taking responsibility for creating a solution. The issue is that when we turn to others in this way, we're not really connecting to each other on any deeper level. We share a moment, but are not seen any deeper, nor do we see others any deeper. Like all of those other coping mechanisms I mentioned at the beginning, they're masks that prevent us from really confronting the deeper needs that lie beneath the surface. Yes, they protect our hearts from heartbreak, but they also dim that which makes our life worth living. When we wake up to realize that we've hardened our hearts, how do we open them up again? We must become the wilderness. We must embody the mindset, as Brene Brown, who Eliana quoted earlier, says, of that untamed, unpredictable place of solitude and searching. A place as dangerous as it is breathtaking, a place as sought after as it is feared. The wilderness can often feel unholy because we can't control it, or what people think about our choice of whether to venture into that vastness or not. But it turns out to be the place of true belonging, and it's the bravest and most sacred place you will ever stand. It's in this wilderness where Avram and Sarai are told to venture into, leaving their family and birthplace in search of the land that God will show them. Only then will they be a blessing. Only then will their lives be a blessing. It's in this wilderness, in dire straits that we read about yesterday, that Hagar calls out in desperation and meets God in the form of an angel. In the process, she addresses God by a brand new name, El Roi, the God who has seen me. She has to leave Avram and Sarai to finally be seen. It's this process that we also see with the Israelites in Egypt. Once they see the burden they're under, they call out to God, and God hears them. Min hametzar, min hamitzrayim, karatia. From the constriction of Egypt, they called out. Notice how they didn't realize their burden and complain to their friends, but they opened themselves up in vulnerability, called out to the universe for help. Anani v'merchavya, and they were answered with expansiveness, with freedom, with possibility, with authenticity and connection. We don't have to physically leave and wander around the world looking for ourselves, although some people, they find themselves in that process. After all, we've seen in these stories of our people that physically being in the wilderness doesn't make much of a difference if we're still mentally in a place of constriction and closure. For the wilderness to be liberating, it requires a shift in our perspective and how we see the world. We must learn to sit in the discomfort, in the unpredictability, and we need to learn how to read what it's telling us about our lives and our purpose. To do so, we need to pause. Let's actually try that for a moment. Let's pause. Take a deep breath. Come into your present. What do you notice? What's coming up for you? Remember that no emotions are bad emotions. They hint at what we need deep down, and for that reason alone, emotions are blessings. Our emotions point us towards what's working well in our lives and where we're in need of change or adjustment. They indicate which of our fundamental needs are being met and which are lacking. Once we've noticed, once we've discerned, we can then choose to act. Choose to act towards life, towards connection, towards love, towards a just justice. So my blessing this new year for us is this. May this new year be one of openness, and may we continue to build a community where we are all seen, loved, and challenged. Shana Tova.